You're listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Give God 90 Radio on Demand. My name is Jerry Mitchell, your host for Give God 90. Thank you so very, very much for joining me for just a little while today as we look at something probably a lot of us have said, or at least thought, or at least wondered about. That didn't end quite like I thought it was going to, or that didn't turn out quite like I had planned. That didn't finish exactly the way I thought it was going to. And we're going to look at that, find out why that is sometimes, and why we get so confused about these things. Because there's some things that we want that might not be what the Almighty wants for us, but there's also some things that we can do to improve our outcome. First, let me remind you, if you have not done so, you can check out GiveGod90.com. There you're going to find all kinds of fun and interesting things, where we kind of got our start. And you're actually going to, if you take the program, the 90-day program, it's not a way to get rich quick. It's not a way to do anything other than help you turn your life around a little bit at a time. You probably didn't get where you are overnight, and you're not going to get back where you need to be in 2 seconds either. So just a little bit at a time, every day, small changes you can make and stick with to improve your life from where you are to where your Creator wants to take you. Just simply by doing nothing other than learning to live the way He designed you to live. It's that easy. It's that simple. That's my agenda. Convincing you to live the way your Creator designed you to live. That's all we're about. But we do offer some help with that, and that is what this podcast is designed to do, and show you places in the Bible that will hopefully aid you and assist you in getting to where you want to be. Okay? We have a growing number of listeners all the time, many of them from around the world in places that I didn't expect. I never expected to reach Australia or the Philippines. That's kind of in the Pacific Ocean over there, and I'm stuck over here on the east coast of the United States next to the Atlantic Ocean. And but it gives us a way to reach the people that need to hear this message. That's what's important to us. That is extremely important. We need people, we need to reach people that need to hear how to improve their life. Okay, let's begin by allowing me to ask this question. Have you ever read a book, or maybe watched a play or a movie, maybe a TV series, or some type of entertainment where the writers or the author didn't necessarily end things the way you thought they were going to end? Maybe the writers of a TV show brought two characters together, or separated two characters that you just knew, the opposite was going to happen. Maybe a book. I've read a couple of books that certainly didn't end the way I expected it to. I remember one particular author who wrote a series of books who said, I knew the end before I wrote the first word. Let me say that again. This author knew the end before he wrote his first word. That's going to come into play in just a little while, okay? Maybe some people like to do crafts. They like to build things. They like to create things. Maybe it's an art project or a painting project, and you begin with one idea. But somewhere in the middle, it kind of changes gears, so to speak. And as it changes gears, it doesn't necessarily take on a life of its own, but you see that what you thought was going to happen is not the way it's actually going to turn out. You begin to realize that the way you wanted something to happen isn't going to be the result you expected. So, just recently I had that aspect. I was on one of our pieces of furniture. We needed some arm protectors, and so we went out and got a couple of pieces of material, and we put it together, and it didn't fit exactly like I intended it to, and I had to go back and readjust the pattern a little bit and redo some things. And although it's not absolutely perfect, it is functional. And thank the Almighty for allowing me to put together something that at least is functional. So it does its job. It just doesn't look exactly like I had pictured it in my mind. We often see this in relationships as well, don't we? We meet someone and we think, boy, this is really going to go somewhere. This might be the person I spend the rest of my life with, right? And then something will happen, and you wind up going your separate ways. Sometimes we meet people and we think, oh my, I have absolutely nothing in common with this person. I have absolutely, there's nothing there to draw me to this person. And they wind up being one of your closest friends. There are people I know that don't exactly enjoy the same type of lifestyle that I do. They don't really view our Creator the same way I do. They don't view life the way I do. But they're very good friends. If I was ever in any kind of trouble, they would be the first ones there to help. It's not necessarily this thing of you've got to have a soulmate in everyone. But there are certain things, and you never expect this to turn out that way. You never know who's going to wind up being a part of that inner circle, I guess is a good way to say it. And even that we can look at and say, well, that didn't turn out quite like I expected it, right? I know carpenters sometimes, they begin to build something, maybe a house or a room, maybe remodel a room, and plans need to change sometimes. Maybe that window doesn't go right there. Maybe it needs to move over a little bit. Painters, house painters, I should say, not artistic painters, but house painters. Sometimes they'll go in and somebody picks out a color paint and they get one wall done, and the people walk in and go, oh no, that doesn't look at all like what I had thought it was going to look like. Right? There are numerous times where we see this all over Scripture. All over our lives, all throughout our lives, we look at something and say, oh, that didn't end like I thought it was going to end. That didn't turn out well at all. Well, later on, after you've had some time to grow and to look back, I would suggest that it did turn out very well for you in some instances. Not in every instant, but in some instances, it will turn out very, very well for you. If we look at Ecclesiastes, and Ecclesiastes is not a book we often go to in the Bible, but it's an important book because Solomon gives us some insight into some things that we don't always realize what he's saying. But if we begin in chapter 11 of Ecclesiastes, and I'm actually going to look at this from the Holman translation today, Solomon starts out, send your bread on the surface of the waters. Now, that by itself doesn't make any sense, does it? Absolutely not. So we have to keep reading. We have to grasp this concept, this idea that Solomon is putting together and building for us here. He says, throw your bread out on top of the water, for after many days you might find it. Give a portion to 7 or 8, for you don't know what disaster might happen on earth. He's saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? If the clouds are full, they will pour out rain on earth. Whether a tree falls to the north or the south, the place where it falls is where it's going to lie. Now, that makes a lot of sense, right? Now, think about what Solomon's saying here. He's putting together some things that we might not quite... We're going to look at it and say, Solomon, what were you drinking before you wrote this? You were into the strong wine, right? You were drinking some stuff here that, well, of course, if a tree falls, that's where it's going to land. Doesn't that just make sense? But think about it this way. If you go down a road, isn't that the path you're on? If you begin to go to a certain place, but you turn off of that path, are you going to wind up at your original destination? Of course you're not. Of course you're not. He's saying that when a tree falls, it doesn't matter if it falls to the north, it doesn't matter if it falls to the south, that's where it lands. We should be like the tree. What we start out for, that should be our destination. I really kind of enjoy that particular verse, though. If the clouds are full, they'll pour out rain on the earth. Now, an empty cloud has nothing to give, right? If I used this analogy the other evening with someone, I said, if I have nothing to give, but you need something, can you receive it from me? If you need $1, but I don't have $1, I can't give you $1, then it doesn't do you any good to come to me for it. But at the same time, if I can't give it to you, that must mean that I don't have it. Now that kind of makes sense, right? And we were actually talking about being able to pass diseases on. We were talking about the coronavirus. And I said, if I don't have it, it's impossible for me to give you something I don't have. And that was the analogy that we wind up using, and they understood what I was saying. If I don't have a disease, I can't give you a disease. If I don't have leprosy, I can't give you leprosy. If I don't have coronavirus, I can't give you coronavirus. If I don't have a common cold, I can't give you a common cold. If I don't have strep throat, I can't give you strep throat. If I don't have $100, I can't give you $100. If I don't have a 50-cent piece, I can't give you a 50-cent piece. It's the same thing. Same thing. If the clouds are full, they're going to pour out rain. Okay, let's go on to verse 4. The one who watches the wind will not sow, and the one who looks at the clouds will not reap. If all you're doing, if you've got your head in the clouds, this is probably where this comes from. If you have your head in the clouds, what good is it? You're not going to be able to plan anything because you're just going to go hungry when everybody else has been planting their seeds. When it comes time to pick your fruit, there won't be any fruit for you to pick. Verse 5 is where I really wanted to go with this. Just as you don't know the path of the wind, you don't know. Today we can look at certain wind patterns and we can look at the satellite imagery and all that kind of thing. And we have a general idea which way the wind's going to blow. But what we really don't understand is once that wind is on the ground and it's interfered with by buildings and trees and mountains, and it flows differently across the temperature gradients, on lakes and rivers. You don't know the exact path of the wind. You can't really predict which way the wind's going to blow. If it's coming from a certain direction, is it always going to come from that direction? if you have, and I've seen this in the mountains, if you have a couple of what they call, well, what we called hills in the draw. Okay, you have kind of like a narrow valley, but it's got some bumps in it, and the wind's coming down that valley. You can be pretty sure which way it's going to flow around which hill the strongest, but you don't know for sure. So you can't tell the path of the wind. We don't realize, we don't understand yet how bones develop while a child is in the womb. We really don't have a grasp of that. We know that there are certain proteins that do things, and we know the physical aspects of it, but what we really can't tell is why it does it, other than the Almighty designed it that way, right? So after Solomon goes through all of these things, and he's telling us, this can happen and that can happen, this won't happen unless that happens. Now he gets down to the nitty-gritty at the point he's going to make when he says at the end of verse 5, you don't know the work of God who makes everything. You just don't know the work of God who makes everything. Think about that. We can't tell. We really don't know. We really don't understand. We as mere people can't grasp the concept of it, can we? Now, if we look at Job chapter 11, specifically in verse 7, we read, Can you understand all the vastness of our Creator? Is there any way for you to discover if there are any limits, what limits there are to the one who made you? That's kind of like, a table, and I've used this analogy many, many times. A table that a carpenter or craftsman builds, okay? If that table could think, would that table be able to say, wow, he made me this way? How much more could he have done if he needed something bigger, if he wanted something more grand, if he wanted something more beautiful? Just because a craftsman builds a table, if somebody puts a book on it, it doesn't automatically become a bookcase, right? If the Almighty designs us the way we are, could he have done something greater? Could he have done something grander? He probably could. But he's content and satisfied with us. I don't know why, but he is. We don't always know why things are going to turn out the way they turn out. If we look in Genesis 29, we get a really good lesson of that with Jacob. Jacob goes, and here's Laban, and he looks at Laban's daughter, and he goes, ooh, she's really cute. I kind of like old Rachel, young Rachel, I should say. Guys, you know what I'm saying. You look at this person and you go, oh, she's really pretty. She's really pretty, and I bet, truth be known, ladies, you do the same thing, right? Oh, he's handsome. I could see myself walking into a place as a couple with that person. I could see myself, oh, that one's really nice. But you're looking at the outside physical aspects, aren't you? Now, Jacob, he makes a deal with Rachel's father. He says, look, I will work for you for 7 years. Right? And at the end of 7 years, you're going to let me marry your daughter, Rachel. That was the deal. That was what was That was what was supposed to happen. However, that's not what happened. At the end of 7 years, they throw a party, they have a wedding, and I believe it's in verse 24 or 25, Jacob realizes it's not Rachel under the veil. It was Leah who was under the veil. Jacob gets a little upset. He says, you tricked me. The father says, what do you mean I tricked you? You said you wanted to marry my daughter. Here's my daughter. That's the wrong daughter. Well, you should have been more specific, Jacob. Right? You should have checked. You should have looked. Oh, Jacob, you should have been more careful. Let this be a lesson to you. So Jacob learned his lesson pretty well. He says, all right, old man, I'm going to work for you for another 7 years. Didn't turn out quite like Jacob had planned. But guess what? There's a certain lineage because it wasn't Rachel's children that receive all of the greatness. It was Leah. The promise was through Leah. It was worth waiting for. It was worth happening. Rachel, she gets buried along the way, right? But it was Leah who gets buried in the place of honor. When we think about the things that don't turn out the way we want them to turn out, when we think, that book didn't end the way I thought it was going to, or that plan right there, that just didn't do what I thought it was going to do, or you know what I mean? There's nothing that it should be surprising here. I just didn't think that was going to happen that way. I just wasn't sure. Now, I think we all have that situation sometimes, don't we? Because, let's face it, we see something and we think, that might be what I want. That's exactly what I want. That's just exactly what I want. But then, somewhere along the way, it kind of gets twisted a little bit. And things happen, things change, people change. We have an idea and then we sleep on it, right? Maybe we have an idea and we tell it to some friends or some people that we trust, and they say, I don't think that might be a good idea. Or maybe we come up with an idea and somebody will say, yeah, that's not bad, but what happens if you do it this way? Maybe you get it improved, right? So it might not end exactly the way you had it pictured, but it gets better. If we look at Isaiah chapter 46, I'm going to start in verse 8. Remember this and be brave. Take it to heart, all of you transgressors. Remember what happened long ago. For I am God, there is no other. I am God, there's none like me. I declare the end from the beginning, and from long ago what has not yet been done. And I say, my plan will take place, and I will do what I choose to do. Now, I mentioned before a gentleman that had wrote a series of books. And he said, I knew the end. I had the end in my mind. I knew exactly how it was going to turn out before I wrote the first word. I kind of choose to believe that our Creator had the end planned before He spoke creation into existence. I think He understood that there was going to be some turmoil. I think he understood there was going to be some problems. I think he understood there was going to be all of the corruption and all of the chaos and all of the weirdness, but he realized it was going to be worth it. And he said, for everybody who joins me on this journey, it will absolutely be worthwhile. Now, if you choose to go against what the Almighty says, it's not going to be so worthwhile, is it? Things aren't going to go quite the way you had planned. But if you learn how to do things as closely to the way God would like to have them done as possible, that's when things turn out far better for us. I did a podcast last week called Swimming Against the Tide. And it's true. If you try to swim against the tide, you get tired. You get wore out. Sometimes you get defeated. Sometimes you drown. But if you do things the way the Almighty tells you to do them, it may feel like you're swimming against the tide because you're going one way. It seems like everybody else is trying to drag you their way. But if you just keep going, He will give you the strength. He will give you the endurance. He will give you the grace to keep on going. And when you come out of that, it is so much better. Your life improves so much. The people around you look at you and say, "What happened? What happened? What are you doing different? What's going on? What do you have that I need in my life?" And when you tell them you have the Almighty, a couple of different things are going to happen. You might lose some friends over that. You might lose some acquaintances over that. In some parts of the world, I'm going to be honest with you here, in some parts of the world, you may lose your head, quite literally, over that. You know what? If you do wind up being killed because you stood and said, my Creator tells me I need to stand here and let you do this to me, your reward will be great later. Because there is a time when all of that is avenged. We don't have to do it. The Almighty does it for us. When we stand with our Creator, it's a big difference than when we take a stand and hope He's right there with us. Do yourselves a favor. Don't try to guess the outcome. Follow His instructions. Go where He tells you to go. Do what He tells you to do. And then, when you get there, look and say, it was worth it. Because eventually, you're going to hear some words you want to hear. You're going to hear words like, well done. Come on in. Just right. Couldn't have done it better myself. All of those praises will be put on you if you strive to do the things He's asking you to do. It's that simple. It's that easy. Might not come out, might not turn out exactly the way you thought it was going to, but it will turn out to benefit you and the people around you, and it will bring glory to the Creator. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this gives you a little bit more insight on how things can happen, how things can turn around, and why things might not always end the way we have them planned. Until next week, please have a blessed week.